All right, we're gonna start with our parallel lines review for mastery test. I just wanted to go over a couple things when we have would be our two parallel lines. I didn't draw them perfectly. And we can say that those two would be cut by, this is called a transversal, going through the two parallel lines. There's a lot going on here as we go over a few things. We have these two angles here create a straight angle. So I know that this angle plus this angle is going to be 180 degrees. And then if I come around here, that's going to be 180 degrees. And then these two pairs would also be 100 degrees. And that same pattern happens down here. And what also happens is we get a lot of congruent angles. So corresponding angles that are in what we say the same location. So like the top right, those would be corresponding angles. And those would be congruent or equal. The top left angles would be congruent. So if they're in like that same location, we say that's corresponding and those angles are equal, congruent. Vertical angles, angles that are directly across from each other. So these two angles here would be vertical angles that are congruent. And that's what we run into here on this first line, or this first problem. It says line R cuts parallel lines P and Q. So there's our parallel lines and they're cut by this line R. E and G, here's angle E, angle G, and they're directly across from each other. So they are what we call congruent. And we know they're congruent because they are vertical angles. So I could also say C, A, and C are vertical angles. D and B are vertical angles, and I know that they would be congruent. And that's another word for equal. They're the exact same measure. All right, let's try the second one here. In the figure, we have line segment AB, and that is parallel to CD. So we know these are parallel. This could be a line that is cutting through. And 40 is angle B. I need to find angle C. So those are what we call that alternate interior angles. And so I can tell that 40 would also be angle C here. And then angle D is that alternate interior angle of A. And so I can tell that D is going to be 75 degrees. All right, next one, we got parallel lines P and Q cut by non-parallel lines M and N. So M and M are not parallel, and we need to find the value of X. So right now, if I just highlight and kind of look at this part here. So just kind of keep your eyes focused on that one. We can actually figure out all the angles here. I know that if I go all the way around, that forms that straight angle, which would be 180 degrees. So to figure this angle out, I can do 180 minus the 102, and that's going to give me 78 degrees. Okay, and then I can go around because I know, well, this would be 78, this one would be 102. Now here X is that corresponding angle, and I know that's also got to be 78 degrees. All right. So now let's focus just on this one because we got to go over to y. So I just need to really look at this part here. And the value of y, well, that is corresponding. These two angles are in that same location, the top right. They're corresponding angles, so I know that's going to be 115 degrees. All right, next problem. In the figure, lines M and N are parallel to each other. Lines P and Q are also parallel, so both pairs are parallel here. Find the value of X. Okay, well, we can go around. I can, again, figure out all of the angles in this whole diagram, since we do know that they are parallel. Like if I wanted to find this angle, I know I could do 180, because that's those two together would make that straight line. So 180 minus 68, 80, is going to give us 112. So this here would be 112. Right, and then these are corresponding. They're just over here, but they're in that same location. So y corresponds with 68, x corresponds with 112. All right, here's another setup where I know as long as I have two parallel lines, they have the transversal coming through. If I know one of the angles, I can figure every one of them out. So here, that's 180 degrees. This part is 137. For this one, I can do 180 minus 137. And that would give us the 43 degrees. So this angle here is 43 degrees. We got our vertical angles, so directly across, this one's going to be 43. This one's going to be 137. And then these are all corresponding angles. So as long as they're in the same location, like this top right, this one's 137. This one would be 43. This one, 137 and 43. It's kind of like a puzzle. Once you know one of them, you can figure out all the rest. All right, we got a pair of parallel lines, again, cut by a transversal. And we're gonna match angles with the corresponding angles. That's what we talked about in some of the other problems. So this same location, so like A is in the top left, and that would correspond with E. They're both in that top left location. Angle B, let's say, corresponds, that's in the top right. And then on this one, the top right is F. D corresponds bottom left angle, H. And then C and G are a match. They're both in that bottom right. In the figure, we got M and N, and they're parallel to each other, and we also have Q and P that are parallel. What would be our value of X? So just like up above, we can go around the whole diagram and figure out what is corresponding to each other. As I look here, I have a vertical angle. So directly across, I know this one also has to be 100. And then that would mean all these corresponding angles here are 100. So kind of that top left and bottom right. Top left, bottom right. Top left and bottom right. So those are all corresponding. And then all the rest of them have to be 80, because to go around, that piece there would have to be 80 degrees. that's a little bit extra. It was only asking really what's the value of x, and that would be 100. This one in the figure, a pair of parallel lines cut by a transversal. What kind of angle are A and C? So here's A and C. Well, those two, are those directly across from each other? We would say that those are vertical angles. When two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, angle A and B are alternate interior angles. Let's take a look at what those look like. So here's our two parallel lines cut by a transversal. And this here would be like the inside interior of your parallel lines. Out here, we would call the exterior. So in here, interior, and then alternate is another word for kind of opposite sides of each other. So if I set up angle A and B as alternate interior, they're inside the parallel lines, but on opposite sides, alternate sides. And we know that those each measure 105. So we know that's 105. And those are, also, that one's also 105. Alternate interior angles are congruent as well. What is the measure of the other alternate interiors? So what A and B are alternate interior angles. There's also this other set here. These are also alternate. They're on the opposite side of the transversal inside the parallel lines. And to figure out that piece, again, this all the way around makes 180 degrees. So I need to do 180 minus the 105, and that would leave us with 75. So I know that those two angles there would be 75. All right, let's go ahead and do one more together. This one says we have a pair of parallel lines cut by a transversal. What is C? We want to figure out C, and we know angle B is 35. So up here's 35. B and C together form that straight line. I know together their angles need to add up to 180 degrees. So we can do 180 minus 35. And that's going to leave us with 145. Okay, I hope that helps you prepare for your mastery test, and keep up the great work. See you on the next video.